So it's finally here. Halo Infinite. The first new Halo game to come out since I've become a real fan of the series. Now, to say I was excited for this game is a little bit of an understatement. If you haven't had your dose of cringe for the day, check out my somehow 17-minute long ramble on Halo Infinite I did last year. You know, it's funny just how much of my opinions have changed. Like, I was bad-mouthing the Bulldog and saying the Commando is cool? What a moron. The Commando is the lamest weapon in the series. We'll come back to that. But you know, it is kind of neat how about the whole, how I said, we kind of go under the ring. I thought that would have been a really cool idea. We sort of did that in Infinite. Not going to really say I guessed it on that one. But now that Halo Infinite is here and we've all had some time to really get a feel for it, I think it's time to discuss it a little bit. And I've decided to start with the part that I was most excited about. The campaign. Sometime after Halo 5, Chief is sent on a mission to the Zeta Halo ring to finish off Cortana with an infiltration AI called the Weapon. However, plans go out the window with the inclusion of the Banished, who take out Chief and a good chunk of what's left of the UNSC. 6 months pass and we see an unnamed Pelican pilot who's been waiting for a chance to leave the ring and go home. Finally, he sees his chance floating in the cold vacuum of space. After bringing Chief back to his senses, he and the pilot do not go home, much to the pilot's dismay, but instead go to the ring to find the weapon and try to stop the Banished, now led by Escharum, the teacher of the previous leader Atriox. The guy who threw Chief out the window, and in Chief's own words, defeated him brutally. But it's not as simple as just giving Escharum a skewer to the head. There's another player in this game, the Harbinger, an ancient being from a race that the Forerunners did dirty a long time ago. Join the club on that one. Also, Cortana is dead now. Weapon thinks this is a mission success, but Chief doesn't think so because they have no idea who killed her, and her memories are just floating around in physical form on the ring. Neat. I'm kind of skipping around a bit to try and avoid spoilers, but I think I should just tackle them and my thoughts on the story head on, so... Alright, so am I the only one who just doesn't buy the dynamic between the three main characters? Like, they are clearly at odds with each other. For good reason. Chief, after the whole Cortana bad incident, is very unsure about Weapon, who is just a copy and paste of the original Cortana. Pilot is so tired and scared after all he's lost and had to deal with, and he's just desperate to finally go home. And Weapon, well, I'll get to her in a minute. There really isn't a moment when I feel that these three ever just try to understand each other and come together. Like, we kind of skip the build-up just to get to the happy little Three Musketeer amigo whatever family at the end. Like, poor Pilot, he is nothing but a sarcastic chauffeur for most of the game. And with how much his family was built up in the beginning, I felt that was going to be, his driving motivation to go home and ditch the ring, which is a perfect motivation and also perfectly clashes with Chief's issues going on at that moment. But we find out his family is dead, and that was his motivation for joining the UNSC. And when he got scared of the Banished, he fled and now has some serious survivor's guilt, which leads to him calling himself a failure. That is an interesting motivation, but not nearly as interesting as the family thing. And Chief, he is so... you know how I said in the Halo 4 video that it would be so lame if he only spoke in one-liners and emotional moments? Well, he doesn't get that bad, but he is way too close to that line. He is just a robot again in a lot of ways. And yes, they do try to peel away at that, but in a way that kind of ignores his arc in 4. He was just reset, back to basics, and they do try to at least show that he's not entirely a one-liner machine. And they do give him some great moments to emote. Like, there is a point where they ask him why he keeps fighting and how does he keep going with all of this, and he just doesn't have a good answer. Why would he? He's doing this way longer than Halsey or anyone could have ever predicted. He was supposed to win the war or die. That's his options, and he just kept winning and he's been winning for way too long. And most of that now is without a good reason to win.
You got family, Chief? Anyone special out there?
No.
Hello? What about me?
No, you're not in this episode.
Nothing of what happens in this game was really enough for me to buy the three of them growing closer as a family. And that goes double for her. Weapon is a character I really enjoyed at first. But as I kept running into issues with this game's story, a pretty common issue was her place in it. Like, she's basically a new Cortana. Why? Like, no offense to her or anything, but I mean, Weapon is an adorable pile of sunshine. But I was kind of hoping that the pilot was going to be our Cortana replacement. Like a second opinion that was communicating with Chief and sort of being against each other at first, but kind of becoming friends at the end. Chief teaching the pilot about the war and why they need to fight, and the pilot teaching Chief more about connections with his humanity through his own want to return home to his family. That's kind of what I was kind of getting from the original trailers, you know? I thought that would have been a really cool twist on the dynamic, but the pilot really doesn't get a chance to shine in this game. You pretty much meet the Weapon right after you do the pilot, and it's very clear which one the story wants to focus on. Like I said, the pilot just becomes a chauffeur, and other than be a grouch, he doesn't do anything else. Like, he comments from time to time, but it's mostly to remind you that he's here. And I mean, yeah, if another Cortana showed up like this, of course the story's gonna focus more on her. But you guys really shot the pilot in the foot, and the idea of another Cortana is a potentially rich idea, but like, she's kind of boring. She's very trusting and childish, not in a bad way, but she's just kind of like a kid that needs protecting, and it gives Chief an awkward fatherly role to her. Mandalorian is fantastic, guys, but maybe this was not the direction to go in for these two characters. She just kind of exists as a way for Chief to examine his failure with the last Cortana, which I'm still struggling to figure out how it's his fault. She kind of just randomly turned evil or something. We still just have no idea why she did that. We just don't know why she just turned evil still. Other than that, Weapon is just another Cortana, which I feel should bother Chief a lot more than it does. But they do have a moment that's real interesting. At one moment in the game, Chief worries that Weapon has been compromised, so he tries to delete her. Which, wow, okay, that's interesting. And then she stops it and saves herself. Oh no, and it gets awkward for a little bit. And I'm just like, wow, I can't wait to see the consequences of this. That's really interesting. They didn't do anything. In fact, that whole situation ends with her apologizing to Chief. Like, bro, really? Really? Listen, man, there should have been real consequences for that decision. Like, what if this time Cortana went bad actually because of Chief, and not for some random reason we're never told about? Also, I don't care how much mincemeat Halsey made of your brain, Weapon. How did she not know she's a clone of Cortana? Like, how did you not know that? Then we find out how Cortana died and how she turned good in like the last 3 milliseconds of her life. Like, dude, we see her do some seriously awful stuff. And as soon as Atriox tries to do something bad, she's like, oh no, John, I've been awful. I'm going to be a good girl now. That is so lame. And she also finds the Weapon and is just like, wow, a clone, that is so neato. This is exactly what John needs. She's got my blessing. Like, Weapon's existence doesn't bother you at all? Your greatest fear is John getting another Cortana model, and you're just happy with all this. Listen, 343, I get trying to delete your mistakes and all, but this is a bit too much. Also, don't get me started on the timeline of events here. I have no idea how Atriox beat Chief before he had a chance to upload Weapon to the ring or whatever, then meet Cortana as she's noticing Weapon's existence. And then we have the villains in this. I love Escharum, and the Banished in general. They have such a really cool DIY way of scavenging and modifying UNSC, Covenant, and Forerunner tech. And seeing classic enemies like the Brutes and Scavengers back is a real treat. And if you watched that Infinite video from last year, you can already guess my feelings on Escharum. He's my favorite Halo antagonist. I love everything about the guy, especially the performance. I can't help but talk just like him and try my best to emulate his voice whenever he's talking on screen. I love this guy. He's great, but I have to admit, a lot of the reason I like Escharum is the rule of cool. But that's just how it be sometimes, and he gets a lot of depth in his cutscenes and his audio logs, at least the ones I've listened to. The Harbinger is a thing, I guess. She's not there for most of the plot, which is odd considering she's the main antagonist of the game, and she even gets, final boss status, but she's barely in the game. And her goal to awaken whatever the Endless are is something that the game is way too vague about, and it's clearly just setting up future campaigns, which I really hate how often this campaign does that. I mean, the Flood is literally on the ring. Where? We'll see, I guess! Take a shot how many times you hear somebody, mostly Chief, talk about how special this ring is, and the most vaguest, not like other rings, possible. Can you tell that got on my nerves, just a little bit? Can we just finish this first campaign? In fact, here's how I'd fix the story, since we're here. 1. No more weapon. This is a Chief and pilot-centric story, and we're bringing back his family. 2. No more Harbinger. Cortana is the main threat again, and she's the one teamed up with the Banished looking for the Endless. She can keep the Sentinels and Skimmers as her grunt forces, but with the addition of Knights and a new version of Promethean Warrior. The new Promethean Warrior is sorta like that Warden dude in Halo 5, but he's a lot smaller, I guess, and he fights as one of the Spartan killers, sorry. Quick side note, I know most of you don't want the Prometheans back, and I get it, but I hate the fact that they just don't show up at all after having such a presence in the last 2 games. And besides, the Knight's main weapon was reinvented to be the Heatwave. We're most likely going to get more Promethean revisions, let's just add some of them to the roster. 3. Escharum is still the head of the Brutes, and the reason they are under Cortana is because she killed Atriox in some sort of ritual challenge for leadership, but not in the way that Escharum found fair or just, so he's still skeptical of Cortana and doesn't really like her. 4. Chief and Pilot make their way to finish off Cortana with a new weapon, in quotes, where they find their two-way to stop her as she's unleashed the Endless, which are revealed to be what created this warped version of Cortana. Anyway, big fighter whatever, and Chief deploys the weapon who turns out to be, Weapon, who deletes the copy Cortana, temporarily keeping the Endless at bay and returning the Sentinels and Prometheans back under the control of the monitors. 5. Weapon in this idea has all the memories of Chief, but still has to delete herself, to finish the job or whatever. So Chief, gets another goodbye to Cortana, hopefully a permanent goodbye this time, and Weapon tells Pilot to watch out for Chief before deleting herself. 6. The day is saved for at least a moment, then BAM! Cut to young Atriox or whoever that guy was at the end. Look, I understand that Halo 5 was polarizing, to say the least, but I don't think backtracking a lot of your decisions was the correct call. I mean, backtracking your previous incarnation of Cortana without explaining her awful behavior just wasn't a good idea, and it absolutely wasn't cool to just bring her back again after killing her again. Why did you do that? But it is the 20th anniversary. You want to start out on a more clean slate to set up your next 10 years of stories. And you want Cortana back as a good guy, to make it all nostalgic. You want to go back to basics with a spiritual remake of Combat Evolved. That is not a bad idea in of itself, but the way that it was executed was just not the best. I really felt Chief had regressed a bit as a character, just a bit. I'm glad they didn't fully get rid of it, but pilot and weapon are just there for a lot of the campaign. They have some highlights, but they aren't built up to in a satisfying way. If you remember my video on Metroid Dread, yeah, I know, I'm comparing Metroid and Halo again, sue me. I didn't like how they didn't show how Samus, really felt. She didn't have those monologues like she did in Fusion. I really enjoyed getting into her headspace and seeing what she thought about the situation around her. And Dread backtracked on that heavily. My mistake in that analysis is that I was comparing Dread to Fusion, when I really should have compared Dread to Other M. The reason they were scared to give Samus a voice for more than a section or two of the game. In a similar way, I want to compare Infinite to 4, but I really should be comparing it more to 5. The reason they were scared to fully flesh out Chief and get experimental. I realize now the issues I'm having with the backtracking of the character progression comes down to the companies trying to fix what was polarizing to be more palatable for a new game. I definitely get that, but I don't agree with it. And I'm not stupid. I know part of the reason for me not agreeing is the lack of experience I have with Halo 5's campaign and Other M. I only beat Halo 5 once, and I still haven't beat Other M. But those two were an issue of how the ideas were executed. The ideas themselves weren't the problem. Basically, I'm not a big fan of Infinite's story, and how it spends a lot of time setting up more campaigns that I'll have to buy, along with how it fast-tracked the friendship between these three protagonists. On the other hand, Escharum is awesome, and I wish we get to use all those enhanced weapons and an enhanced chopper in multiplayer. But we are not done with the campaign just yet. We still need to talk about the open world that you'll be playing in. Now, it has all the normal kind of boring filler that's in most open world games, that usually only gives you an upgrade point for equipment/shield, or maybe a cool new variation of an existing weapon. Now, running around the ring is pretty fun for the most part. There's some cool vistas and secrets to find. But most of the map is the same foresty mountain kind of area, and they do mix it up a little bit in some areas, but for the most part it all just looks the same, which is boring, and it seems like you can't backtrack to this cluster of islands at all. It's not the best, alright, if that's what you want to hear. I admit, it is fun for a little bit, especially when you load up with Marines and really have some fun. So glad to see the Marines and the Banished talk as much trash as possible, it's great. And I found myself mother-henning my Marines pretty hard. Also, if you haven't noticed, Halo Infinite is a very odd looking game. Now, the art style is actually pretty decent, I don't dislike it at all. It's a return to the more simple style of classic Halo, which is a good thing. I like a lot of 343's designs in 4 and 5, but they did get a bit on the complicated side. The art style is fine to me, I'm not really strong with it either way. Graphically, no. I know I'm playing on a pre-built PC from 2017. I know I'm not going to be able to run this thing at max settings. But high and medium just don't look right. No matter how much I try to fix the settings, and I'm willing to admit that this is probably more a problem with my PC rather than the game, but I just can't get it to look right. And even when I check out the game, running on max settings like online through YouTube or something, it still just doesn't look right. Something just feels off, But back to the world itself. Why did this have to be open world? It being open world really doesn't add anything of note. Like I said, a lot of it, you do is just boring open world stuff. It's pretty much filler and isn't all that fun to do anymore. Like, the extra boss fights are interesting, but the boss fights in this game are pretty meh with me. Even Eshirim wasn't all that fun. And to be fair, after my first playthrough on Heroic, I did do a normal playthrough for this video, and it didn't make the bosses all that much less of bullet sponges. I don't care what shield you got. A skewer or a rocket should be the end of you, or should at least be really close. I can't tell you how many bosses I fought with a giant skewer spike poking out of their head with half health left. You have to Spider-Man Miles Morales your way around the arena just to stay alive, while getting little hits in or finding ammo once you empty the whole clip just to break the shield. It's not the best, I'll be honest. Not to mention just how linear this game's structure is. Say what you want about ODST, it didn't do the open world thing perfect either, but the different levels being accessible in any order gave it a lot of depth and replayability, and it gave it this mystery element, if you played them out of order. I feel like Infinite wouldn't have felt any different if it was just a standard level-to-level structure. The open world is cool at all at first, but it loses its luster as it goes on, which is a pretty decent summary of the campaign in general. I'm not saying I hate this campaign, because I don't. I'd even say I'm excited to see what 343 brings to the table with the other campaigns that will build on this one. But I'm not really a fan of this campaign either, especially for the price tag. Is that how much every campaign's gonna cost? Wait for a sale on this one, guys, that's my recommendation. But we aren't done yet, however. There's still the matter of the multiplayer. But first, you may see I'm only using bots for my multiplayer footage. Well, the reason is I'm not really comfortable having other people's names show up in my video without their knowledge. It's not for any skill reasons though. In fact, I'll admit that I'm pretty terrible as a Halo player. I mean, sometimes I'm alright, but most of the time I'm pretty middling, to be honest with you. Like, these Spartan level bots are kind of giving me a little trouble, to be honest. But hey, it's nice to finally have bots for once, Not everybody has great internet. Alright, gameplay time. Going into Infinite, I was hoping for more of a mix between Halo 5 and CE. Those two Halos are the ones I've always had the most fun with, at least with their multiplayers. And this is kind of a mix of those two. And every other Halo. It's a really nice mix of everything classic and everything modern about the series. And it's just really fun to play, jump, shoot, grapple. Oh, the grapple, bro. I love that thing. It is perfect. You can scale anything, grab anything. Bro, who needs elevators anymore? I use the grapple so much that when I don't have it, it's like I've lost a limb. It's that integral and wonderful for the gameplay. I just love it, man. And the weapons in general are a really nice upgrade to what we're used to in Halo. Though it is super weird to have the assault rifle be actually 100% viable in mid-range. That's different. I thought I'd hate the sidekick, as I'm more of a 5 or CE Magnum kind of guy, but it's grown on me and I kind of get its place in the sandbox. What I don't get is the commando. Why is this here? The assault rifle and the battle rifle have had their ranges extended quite a bit, so having an in-between doesn't make any sense for me. If you need a longer ranged assault rifle, just get the battle rifle. Not to mention the commando has a fairly boring design. It and the sidekick just have this really modern looking kind of actual real gun kind of look that I just think looks really boring and I don't really like it. The new banished weapons are really fun and I like them all fairly well. The highlights are definitely the skewer and the mangler. I did not foresee myself loving the mangler as much as I do. This shotgun revolver just makes me feel like an old-timey sheriff or something and I just love it. Sad to see the plasma pistol lose its EMP ability. I like the electric guns, but it's just not the same, man. Speaking of which, I like how the electric guns are a mix of Forerunner and Banished technologies, and they have this really cool feel to them, and I like how the Sentinels use these electric weapons too. Though my headcanon is that they're just dropping the ammo, and they aren't actually using the Banished gun, because that'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? Oh, and I already mentioned it, but we get a remixed version of the scatter shot with the heat wave. That has a cool alt fire that lets you choose how the projectile shoots out. Not to mention the Sentinel beam is back, I love this gun. And of course, the Cinder Shot. A cool grenade launcher that you can even control in midair. This is what the Promethean weapons should have been like in the first place, man. They added a bunch of cool new settings and options for players. And check it out, we finally got half of the playlists we usually get. Finally! Alright, time to critique. So, I respect the decision to make this a free-to-play game. It's a great idea. And releasing the multiplayer early was a really cool idea. But man, there's a lot missing in terms of content, and the store prices are terrible. How did we not have a Slayer playlist at launch? Not to mention, we are going to be waiting quite a while for a lot of features that are just standard in Halo. I get that they need work, and I'm willing to wait, but man, I wonder how much that delay actually helped this game get along. Now, I'm not saying the developers are lazy or anything, they're not. I never want to ever insinuate or say that crap. Everyone is working to the bone at 343. I know that for a fact, and I respect them a ton. And you know, they've done a lot of work on the game already. Remember when experience was just not a thing? It's still not perfect, but they are working at it. But what really bothers me is that this game was going to come out in 2020. How? Just how? How is this game ever going to come out in that year, huh? Like, what is going on over there, man? And I know the prices are only for cosmetics, but why is it $10 for cat ears and $20 for a voice? I'll be real, I turned all that crap off. The first thing I do when I play multiplayer is turn off the announcer, the comm lady, the AI voice, the Spartan voices, and the subtitles. Because I don't need that useless junk, and it just gets on my nerves. Not to badmouth the voices or sound design, the voice acting is incredible, and you can guess who my favorite performance was. The soundtrack was pretty meh, not bad, but I don't really remember a lot of it apart from the classic Halo theme that I think was used a little too much. But anyway, $20 for a stupid voice pack. Why? And what makes it worse is this all came out after they said they were fixing the prices. Like, bro, come on! The only way for somebody to afford all this crap is if they got a penny whenever this game decides to crap out on you, especially when you just popped one of those EXP boosters that you can't get back, by the way. I've so far spent $70 on Infinite, not counting the cool Nerf gun and some other merch, and I'll be honest, I'm not all that jazzed with my purchase so far. Not to mention the cosmetics. You know, the customization in general is just it's pretty awful, honestly. Like, I know the armor coating was just a way to make people spend money. We all knew that was how it was going to be. We all knew that as soon as it was announced. But man, I can't even use all the coatings on every piece of armor. Are you serious? Why give me an anniversary coating if I can't even use it on Master Chief's helmet? Have you learned nothing over the past decade? Listen, Infinite is supposed to be the next 10 years of Halo. And if it's just going to make it 1 year, it needs to get these issues fixed soon. I know they're on break right now, and they deserve it. But you guys have a lot to work to do when you get back. And best of luck to you guys. I'm excited to see how Infinite evolves and grows over the next decade. But right now, I'm starting to think I should just go back to MCC, which also started off in an awful state, but built itself back up to near perfection. They even fixed the Halo 4 cutscene lighting right after my video on it. So I am excited to see, Infinite grow and change, and I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll talk about it. It's gonna go on for the next 10 years, man, and I'm really excited to see all the types of campaigns and all the crazy stuff. I'm really excited for it. But it's this death by 1,000 cuts situation that Infinite is in that will kill it long before it gets that chance to grow. And I think they can fix it. I genuinely think they can. I've seen them do it with MCC, so I know it's possible. But time will only tell with it, We're just gonna have to wait and see, and I will be here waiting. By the way, can we get gyro controls? I know this is like a really awkward time to put that in, but I really think it would add a lot to the gameplay. It's kind of like that really good in-between between controller and mouse and keyboard. Gyro controls, just put that into consideration. Oh, for Infinite and MCC, because, look, if you don't like gyro controls, you can just have the option to turn them off, but they would be a really nice option to have, that's all I'm saying.
That'll have to wait, Chief. Keep fighting. Sentinels first. I don't think the Sentinels are gonna allow that. Maybe, if you ask them nicely. Not now. Sentinels first.